After quite a bit of debate and theorizing about exactly why the grand jury proceedings ended the way they did in Breonna Taylor's case, with effectively no charges, one sort of incidental charge that really had nothing to do with the actual crime that was committed that night. Now, apparently, the recording of those proceedings is going to be released later this week. Now, we do have a couple of comments from people involved in this process we want to give you, including the Kentucky Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, who says, the grand jury is meant to be a secretive body. It's apparent that the public interest in this case isn't going to allow that to happen, saying that his team has an ethical obligation not to release the recording. Yeah, but now you have like a judicial requirement to release it. He added, despite these concerns, we will comply with the judge's order to release the recording on Wednesday. This is as a result of Jefferson Circuit Judge Ann Bailey Smith directing it to be filed during an arraignment hearing on Monday for Brett Hankinson, the officer who's the only one that was indicted on literally any charges there. He pled not guilty to those 3 counts of wanton endangerment, charges that he fired his weapon indiscriminately into a neighbor's apartment. And really fast, we're gonna get back to the fact that the documents are gonna come out. He was protected as cops are always protected, and just given these 3 sort of BS charges, and he's pleading not guilty to them. Like, dude, we know you fired your gun. I don't understand exactly what the argument you're making is, that it's what, that it wasn't dangerous, that you like fired high. I don't know, but so we are gonna get some more information out of this. People saying that effectively the way those proceedings were characterized after they were done was not accurate as to what had actually been discussed. Maybe now we'll actually know.
I mean, first of all, let's talk about Daniel Cameron. As this guy, wow, how interesting, how convenient when he's concerned about ethics.
Mm-hmm. Does he feel like he did his ethical duty?
Well, he thinks it's unethical to release the grand jury recordings, but it's totally ethical for these cops to go and bust through somebody's door, shoot up an apartment building, kill a woman, and not even want to charge these officers. He never wanted to charge them. He just was like, well, yeah, it was dangerous to spray an apartment building with bullets. 20 rounds, John. Yeah. How convenient that's concerning, that it's concerning that some grand jury secretive body recordings might come out, but he's not concerned about murdering a woman who's innocent in her home.
Yeah.
This guy's discussing, he's discussing, and he is the reason that we have systemic problems in this country. He is one of the cogs in the wheel, and I have a lot of faith in the fact that, I mean, I've been to countless protests, vigils, marches for Breonna Taylor. We are going to get justice for her, and she is just one person who's indicative of many, many other people of color who have been just recklessly murdered with no accountability, no justice at all. And the fact that somebody on that grand jury was like, no, not today. I have to say something. I have to do something. That means all of these protests were not in vain, in my opinion, because it's going to take time for us to make change of these problems systemically in this country. And it gives me faith that we're actually here. We didn't think that this would happen. Has this ever happened?
I mean, look, you can go back over the years and find the rare cop who actually went to jail for what they did, but it is very rare. It is very rare. Grand jury proceedings being made public is also quite rare, and we're at this point mostly speculating as to why they're being made public, and I think in a reasonable way. But we don't know exactly if it is that something was said after the fact that wasn't accurate to what the deliberations had actually been. We still don't at that point know exactly what was inaccurate, although we do have some reasons to believe that it might be one of a few things that I'll go through. So I'm gonna skip ahead a bit, Brandon, but one of the major points of contention is whether officers announced themselves before entering Taylor's home for the raid back in March. Officers said that they did, but Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, said that they did not, and that he only fired at them because he thought they were intruders. Cameron said last week that a witness said they'd heard officers announce themselves, but family attorney Benjamin Crump told CBS this morning that his team had spoken with 12 different witnesses who said that they had not heard the cops announce themselves. Crump said it's vital to know if the jurors heard from all the witnesses or only the person Cameron mentioned in his announcement. Now, that by itself would be enough to, if that had been portrayed in a false way during the grand jury, then if I was a member of that, I would be incredibly mad about the way it's been discussed afterward. But that's not the end of this actually, because there's one more layer to it. So Aaron Sharpie Apparently, initially, this is the witness who said they announced themselves. Now, back on March 21st, when he was brought in, he said, no, nobody identified themselves. It wasn't until nearly 2 months later when they interviewed him again on May 15th that he said the cops knocked and announced, this is the cops. So 1 out of 13 people said that they announced themselves, but only after changing their story from months earlier when they said that nobody announced themselves. So if that was one of the key points that swung the grand jury, then we need access to those recordings. We didn't know exactly how it was presented. Were any other witnesses brought in? Did they know about the fact that that witness had changed their story? Because it seems sort of important at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, that is the key bit right here. What were they told? What was the jury informed, or how did this story switch? I mean, it really doesn't add up. Why would her boyfriend just randomly shoot at cops if you knew they were cops? Nobody would do that. I mean, even OJ was fleeing the cops. I mean, you're not going to win that gunfight. So it makes no sense the way they're trying to tell this story, except for the fact that they always tell the story like this. And we know that this is exactly what they do. They cover their ass every single time. They take zero accountability. They are vigilante rogue thugs in the street. I mean, John, how I feel about the police department and across the country, all of the systems that we have. I think we need to start fresh. This is exactly why. They do whatever they want. They kill whomever they want. No accountability against the law. I mean, this is the whole reason that the grand jury member wanted to bring this to light, because they know that Cameron is not taking any accountability or responsibility for these police officers. And he should be fighting for Breonna Taylor and her life. I mean, what if they had killed somebody else in the apartment building? Would then it be enough? Just the fact that she was listed on a warrant at one point, that's enough to murder someone?
Well, I mean, what I said, I don't know if it was yesterday, if it was late last week, but like the only charges they had were the fact that they endangered other people who they didn't kill by firing their gun. But the thing is, based on everything we know about the cops, if those bullets had actually hit someone, those would have been on the house too. Like it really just does seem like. So what are you worried would have happened? That it would have killed someone like it killed Breonna Taylor? Nothing about this makes any sense. There's also the story, I don't know as much about this, but there's a story about how apparently ballistics reports are actually inconsistent with Kenneth Walker having been able to have been the one that hit him. And they rebutted that by saying, well, it had to be him because he had a 9mm weapon and the cops all had 45s. But then we find out that I believe it was Hankinson had also been issued a 9mm firearm as well. And so, look, if you think that the cops aren't above shooting them one of their own in the leg to sell a story, I got news for you about cops in America. I'm not saying that happened, but it ain't impossible that it happened.
There was just a guy recently that shot himself. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, exactly. It was not long ago. Anyway, the entire thing is a mess. Hopefully we'll get some information.
The Louisville police chief was fired, in June? For another situation of cops just spraying bullets into a crowd and killing some restaurateur. I mean, this is just what they do. The only reason we're even in this place right now is because there's been a big stink and there's been a lot of people in the streets and there's been a lot of press about it. It's the only reason, and that is why we cannot stop it. That is why we have to keep pushing forward. Whatever happens with this case, and hopefully Breonna gets justice and her family can get some peace on this, we still are making progress. And that's what being a progressive is about, recognizing you're gonna have pitfalls, but knowing you are breaking through some of those walls. And we're doing it.
Yeah, and I hope that they continue. I hope they continue to push for, since the federal government clearly isn't gonna do anything, at least for some states and cities to potentially do something. And by the way, let's assume that Biden actually wins and Trump actually leaves the White House, which seems hard to imagine, but hopefully we'll get there. The protest should continue until Biden does something. They should be across the country in every major city pushing him, because maybe he can be pressured in this way. But it's not gonna happen if everybody just goes home, goes to brunch and all of that when the transition is finally made.
Absolutely, and you know that that's something that a lot of people, it's funny, a lot of Trump supporters assume that if you're against Trump, then you're like pro-Biden or you're pro-Clinton or you're pro-Obama. But as soon as they get into the office, I'm right there protesting against them too. There's so much we need to be doing. Our government is so crooked, and just because you're anti-Trump, it doesn't mean you think everybody else are angels. I particularly think Nancy Pelosi is probably worse than Trump, but that's another conversation.
More depressing, maybe.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.